didn't expect that you would be here, but since you're here, I had scribbled down a few questions that I thought I might ask Mr. Bowers, but you are just the more appropriate person. We have an arts funding request from many organizations, and you can see the size of this book and the size of the requests and the submissions that have been made to us. One of the questions that was asked by a member of this council was, have any of the arts organizations had outstanding bills with the Performing Arts Center? The response back was yes, 2 of them did, to the tune of almost $11,000. My question is, are those bills paid? Do you have any outstanding bills from any of these organizations requesting funds?
Except the 2 that were provided?
Yes.
I don't think so, no.
Okay, but have those 2 paid their bills?
Yes. Okay, they have been paid. I have not been, I'm not current with what's happening in the last couple of weeks. I did see that email exchange.
Right.
But my guess is that it hasn't, and I will check tomorrow.
Okay, well, thank you.
Incidentally, I do want to, since you're asking a question here, I do want to make mention of the fact that earlier this week, Councilwoman Snyder was recognized as a woman of influence by the Indianapolis Business Journal, which was quite an honor and a nice recognition for her. And it was a great write-up that I enjoyed reading in the Indianapolis Business Journal. My congratulations to you.
Thank you. That's not going to get you off the hook for my next question.
It didn't work, John.
I'm assuming that your audit for years, your fiscal year 2011 to the end of, June 2012 is complete? Have you gotten that yet?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is complete. I don't think it's been released yet, but basically it is, and it should be shortly. Unlike last year, we're going to have it on a very timely basis.
All right, so when you get that, would you send copies to each of the counselors, please, so we can look at that? And then along with that, include your copy of the 990s that you have to file.
Okay.
So that we can keep current with that. For those people who are watching, you've seen 2 arts organizations, Performing Arts Center and one of our resident companies, talk about arts funding. And the city has a history of arts funding, spearheaded by the mayor, but it has been somewhat confused. In 2011, the city council gave the Performing Arts Center $2 million, plus $270,000 for the symphony and the rep theater. And I believe that the 4CDC during the year 2011 funded the other arts organizations that are represented in this book. This year, the City Council funded the symphony. The CRC gave you the $5.5 million, and now we're getting into gap funding, which is the issue between the 2 fiscal years. And next year, the City Council, who has just done their budget, is pledging $2.25 million to the Performing Arts Center for your support, plus the additional support for maintenance and parking and so on. And we pledged 1% of the general fund budget for supplemental organizations, again, represented in these books. However, it's confusing, as over these 3-year periods, various groups have stepped up to fund various other groups. So I have a question. The 4CDC and the CRC are kind of symbiotic organizations that move money back and forth. One of the purposes is to move money from the CRC to the 4CDC to the Performing Arts Center in accordance with the laws of the state of Indiana. And other things are a lot less clear. As we were looking at the registers for the check registers for the 4CDC and checking to see what was spent where and what money came in from the CRC, in January of this year there was a check for $100,000. And that was, we found out, to be paid to your former CEO. I have been told it wasn't a compensation package, as he left his particular job, but it was indeed a settlement before a lawsuit was to be filed, at which point, that is always a good thing. Lawsuits never benefit anything but lawyers, so settlement is good. But that it came from the 4CDC is my question. I would have assumed perhaps it would have come to you. Were you at the Performing Arts Center or any member of your board asked to settle this lawsuit for $100,000? And if so, would you tell us the circumstances of that?
Yes. As I recall, and I did not look this up to refresh my memory prior to this because I was not expecting this question. However, based on my recall, during the negotiations between the city and the former CEO, our attorney was contacted by the mediator in the negotiations and asked if the Center for the Performing Arts would pay the $100,000 to the former CEO. And we called a special board meeting to discuss this. And I suppose the next question is, what was the decision? The board discussed this, and the decision was to leave it to the interim CEO, myself, and the board chair to make the decision after further discussion with our attorney and with the mediator, and we did. And we decided not to pay the $100,000.
All right. I think my next question is, was the lawsuit that was perhaps going to be filed against you, the Performing Arts Center?
As I understand it, the lawsuit was strictly between the city of Carmel and the former CEO, and the center was not involved, which is the reason why the center's board, or why the center decided not to pay the $100,000, since the center was not directly involved in that potential lawsuit.
Thank you. That answers a lot of questions. Aren't you glad you came?
Mr. President? Mr. Basile, in light of the turn on discussion, if I might, you're, as many people are aware, likely to understand or know that much of this has to do with the information that's been discovered in the process of refunding what Mr. Wallace had referred to previously, the obligations of the Redevelopment Commission. But if I understand you right now, because the last time you were here, I believe I had asked whether or not you were approached, or the board, to pay the International Investigators bill, and you said yes. Now here's a $100,000 payment to former CEO, which, correct me if I'm wrong, the center did not hire investigative services, so that was outside of your scope or your purview. Now we have a $100,000 payment outside of any of your negotiations. Are there any others? Are these the only two times that the center has been approached in any way, shape, or form to pay for something that they didn't order, they didn't obligate?
I can't offhand think of any other requests. We were subsequently asked again to pay the $100,000. I don't know if that's what you're getting at. But we did not pay it the second time either. And those, I think, are the only times that we were asked to pay for anything that we did not specifically order.
Were the circumstances different on the second request than they were on the first? I mean, why would that come back to you?
The second request, I'm trying to recall now, the second request came to me, to the interim CEO, rather than to the board. And it was in connection with the payment of one of the payments from the city of the $5.5 million. I think it was about $1 million or maybe $800,000 in connection with that. And my response was no, that the center would not pay it.
Are you indicating that there was an expectation that you were receiving more than enough and that you could fund it out of that payment? Is that what you're saying?
That's the impression, yes.
Where did this request come from?
From the, normally we deal with the CRC on this, and it did come from the CRC.
Okay. Was there, I just want to know the details. Was it just a suggestion, a request, a demand? How did it manifest itself?
It was meant to be, I took it as a condition for receiving that payment. However, I said no, and I did talk to 2 or 3 people with the CRC and maybe a couple of others, and that demand was dropped, and we did receive our payment.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Well, I'm sure this turned out to be more exciting than you anticipated when you stepped
I think
up.
the next time I'm going to receive an invitation from the city council, I'm going to New York too.